Transfer of title. Previously, what did we study? Transfer of property. Now, transfer of title. Transfer of title is also same as transfer of ownership. Under this transfer of title, we are going to study a maxim, legal maxim, that is nemo dat quod non habita, which is given under section 27. Now, you may ask, what does this maxim mean? This maxim says that no one can transfer a better title than he himself possesses. That is, who has got a good title for the goods, only he can sell it to the buyer. Then the buyer also gets the good title. Now let's take certain examples and find out how is it that good title is transferred from seller to buyer. Now I have a watch, it's very precious and very costly also. So that is stolen by a thief. And the thief sells this watch for 5,000 to a person A. Now, as per this, whatever we have discussed in the maxim, do you think the person A has got good title over it? No, he has not got good title over it. I can recover it from person A. I have all right as per this. So, unless I transfer it to him, he doesn't get a good title. Now we'll take another case. Now I told you that thief has stolen. Now in case I myself sells it to A, I have a ownership for this, right? So I sell it to A. Now since I had good title, even he gets a good title. Always remember one simple thing: if title of seller is defective, whatever the seller, if he has got a title is defective, the same effect is applied to the buyer also. Even the buyer gets the same title. What if the seller has a good title, buyer gets the good title. If seller has got no good title, the buyer also does not get a good title. Clear with this? So I hope you're clear with this legal maxim. Now there are certain exceptions to this. And what are those exceptions? You have these many exceptions which are being laid down on the board. Now we'll go one by one and see what are those exceptions. First one is transfer of title by estoppel, which is given under section 27. So, as we are discussing, always the owner has a good title and he can transfer it to the seller. If there is someone else other than owner who is selling it to the buyer, the owner can always question the person who has sold it because he has got no right to sell it. Sometimes in law, we have got a concept called law of estoppel, right? So if this law of estoppel is applied against whom? Against the owner, then he may not be allowed to deny the seller's authority to sell. So, if this law of estoppel is applied, there is such a relation between the person who is selling and the owner, real owner, or some agreement where you can bring a law of estoppel and say that, see owner, you cannot question this person. Since he is selling your goods, you cannot question. So, law of estoppel can be applied and the owner of the goods may not be allowed to deny that seller's authority to sell. The owner has to admit that yes, the seller had authority to sell under law of estoppel. That is one of the exception. That is, even if a person does not have authority, by applying law of estoppel, owner cannot question the person who has sold it to the buyer. The buyer gets a good title here. Then, sale by mercantile agent. This mercantile agent definition is given under section 2 subsection 9 under Sale of Goods Act 1930. What it says is, it defines for mercantile agent. It says that in the course of business, if he is an agent or if he has got an authority to sell, purchase, consign goods, buy or raise money for non-security of goods, he is called to be a mercantile agent. An important point to be noted here is, this mercantile agent, when he is doing whatever authority given by the is principal, it should be in the ordinary course of business. Now this mercantile agent, he does not have an authority. We'll take an example. He does not have an authority and still he sells the goods to some person C. This person C, without knowing that he does not have this particular authority to sell, he accepts it in good faith and without a notice that he cannot do so. What happens? For this, we'll go and see what happens in this particular case law, Flokes versus Kings. What happens in this case law is, an agent is entrusted with a car. He has been given a car and also the owner says that, look, this is your reserve price. For this price, you can sell this car for this price only. For example, I want 5 lakhs rupees. So I ask my mercantile agent that you please sell this car for 5 lakhs, not below it. The same thing has happened and the reserve price is fixed. And this agent, in this case, contrary to the reserve price, he sells it to a very low price, below the lower price. And this buyer who has bought it from the mercantile agent buys it in good faith and the agent misappropriates the proceeds also in this case. So it was held that when you are talking about the title of the buyer in this case, for whom the goods have been sold by the mercantile agent, he is purchased in the good faith, that's why he gets a good title. Leave it apart what happens to mercantile agent. We have learned it in law of agency. Here we are talking about the buyer. What is the situation of the buyer? Buyer gets good title over the goods. So always remember, if the mercantile agent did not have authority to do so and he has sold the goods to the buyer, and if the buyer takes it in good faith without a notice that mercantile agent did not have authority to sell it, then he gets a good title. Next, sale by one of the joint owners, that's given under section 28. So when the property of the partnership firm or joint owners, there is a joint owners for it. Instead of taking a partnership, we'll talk about the owners only. So when there is a property owned by several joint owners, there are several 3 or 4 joint owners, and they give that possession of property to one of the owner, and they say that you look after the owner, and all other rest of the owners have consented it. They say that okay, we consent that you please take care of this property to one owner. There are 4 owners, let's assume, and one owner gets the permission to look after the property. He gets the possession of the property and the consent is given by the rest of the owners. And this person who has got the possession of the property, he sells it to the buyer. He just has possession, not ownership. It is a joint owner property, joint ownership property. He has got the just possession. So he sells it without informing to the other owners. Now what happens? So since the buyer has got it in good faith, it becomes a good title. Let's take an example. A, B and C are the joint owner of a horse. They have a horse and A, B and C are joint owners. A is having a sole possession. A has been given a sole possession of that horse and he sells it to X. A sells it to X. He just has a possession and he sells it to X, who purchases in a good faith. So what is the condition? Sale is valid and B and C cannot claim the horse back because he has bought it the buyer has bought it in good faith. That is, X has bought it in good faith and without the notice that he does not have the right to sell. Clear with this? This is also an exception to this particular maxim. The next one is sale by person in possession. Voidable contract. So it says sale by a possession under a voidable contract. If a person is selling the goods who has a possession of it. How did he get possession of it? Through voidable contract. What is voidable contract? Let's see what is it now. Section 19 and 19A of Indian Contract Act gives you what is voidable contracts. It says that if the consent is obtained by fraud, coercion, undue influence or misrepresentation, the contract is voidable, right? So the contract becomes voidable. It is at the option of the parties whether not to further continue it, or they can continue the contract. Clear? You know what is voidable contract now. So voidable contract comes under section 19 and 19A of Indian Contract Act. Now here, there is a sale by person in possession of voidable contract that's given under section 29. So if a person who has obtained the goods, possession of the goods under voidable contract, he sells it to a buyer. Buyer in good faith purchases it, and he does not know that he has got it through a voidable. The buyer doesn't know that he has got the possession of the property through voidable contract. So thereby he acquires a good title, and also the condition important is he should not be aware of that he should not have a notice that it is, and that person who is selling has got the property under voidable contract. Clear? Here also he has got a good title. Now sale by seller in possession. Do remember, sale by seller here. We have one more point, sale by buyer. So here, sale by seller in possession. So now when the seller is having the possession of goods, that is given under section 30 subsection 1. So what happens in general practice is, if the seller has sold the goods and the property, the goods or the property passes to whom? To the buyer. Or once the sale has happened, transfer has happened, seller cannot deal with the property. And if he does so, what it becomes? It becomes tort of conversion. Torts. It is a tortious act. So this is generally what we are doing. General thing what happens. Under section 30 subsection 1, if the seller sold and he has got a possession of goods, and also has got documents of title, and you also have the delivery with him, and the seller or his agent, he sells it to another person. He just has a possession of the goods, plus he has the documents of the title, but the ownership is already transferred. Now again he's having a possession. Now he again sells it to another person. Suppose he has sold it to first A. We'll take an example and let's try to understand. These are certain boxes of chocolates. So there is a person A who is newly starting his shop. He has purchased certain chocolates, a tin of chocolates or boxes of chocolates from B. He is a wholesaler and A is a retailer. Now A is opening a shop. A says that you please keep these boxes in your possession to B till I open my new shop and I set all the things properly, then I'll come and collect it to you. He has paid the money, everything is over. And also keep the title with you, I'll come and collect it. Then when in possession of the seller sells it to the other person now. He sells it to X. Who the wholesaler sells it to X. Now what is the situation of X? It says that if the seller or his agent has sold it to a buyer, the buyer gets a good title in case if he has got it in good faith and without the notice of the previous sale which has taken place between A and B. Clear with this? So he gets a good title because he is innocent and he is not aware of the previous sale. Now, the sixth point is sale by buyer in possession. Here, sale by seller in possession. Here, sale by buyer in possession, that is given under section 30 subsection 2. What happens in this is, it deals with the cases where the buyer in possession of the goods, buyer has got the possession of the goods, not the ownership. Does not have the ownership. Do remember, these two are quite opposite. Don't confuse it with each other. Here buyer has got possession. He just has possession. and no ownership. He has got only possession and no ownership. And the property has not passed to him also, just possession he has got, he has not got the ownership. Now what happens? The same thing like what we discussed. If a buyer has obtained the possession or document of title with the consent of the title owner, in the sense the seller has given the consent that you can have the possession of goods or title of documents, it's okay. Now if this person, buyer, who just have a possession, sells it to another buyer, what is the case? We'll go back to the example and try to understand. Now A purchases certain goods. Let's take goods as apples. Apple is okay. Certain instead of apples, we'll take not perishable. We'll take something like chocolates only. We'll take go back to the example of chocolates. A buys boxes of chocolates from B, and while buying, he issues a check, and he also takes delivery from B. So now A has got a delivery. He issues the check. He gives that. See, the check is dated on this day. I don't have sufficient cash right now, so I'll see to that I'll have sufficient cash on this day, and you can submit the check also. Then you will be getting your cash. So he gives a check and he takes the delivery of boxes of chocolates. And then what this person A does is he sells it to C. Now B has a right to claim goods and damages from A. B has got, because he has not yet got the money or the amount which was due from A for delivering the boxes of chocolates. However, C, now we'll talk about the situation of C. See, who is the C? Who has bought the goods in good faith from this buyer. He has a good title. So these are all the exceptions wherein they are not the owner. They do not have the ownership, but still the sale done by them becomes valid. In the sense, the buyer gets a good title. The next one is resale by an unpaid seller. Now we'll be discussing about the unpaid seller in the further classes. That's given under section 54 subsection 3. What it says, unpaid seller has exercised, he's got basically some rights which we'll be discussing further. Now we'll just see relevant to this point. So he's got certain rights and he has exercised it. What are the rights? Right of lien. Lien is withholding the property till the payment, whatever is due to him, he gets it. Or stoppage in transit. So in case buyer does not, also in case if the buyer does not pay him the amount, he also has the right to resale the property. If the buyer does not pay him the amount to the unpaid seller, he can resale those goods. But before the resale, he should give a notice. Once the notice is sent, the seller cannot claim the goods if it brings less money than whatever the contract money. So maybe the buyer and the seller initially had agreed for 10,000 rupees. They have transferred certain goods and they have agreed for 10,000 rupees. Now what happens? The buyer, he does not pay the goods upon his several requests also. So this unpaid seller, after requesting him continuously, he sends him a notice, I am selling it. After he sends it, when he does a resale, he loses certain things, certain rights from that buyer. So if that goods for which the contract had taken place, if he gets, what was the amount, the initial amount, 10,000 was the contract price. But in case if he has got less than the contract price, that is if he gets only 5,000, he cannot claim that loss amount from whom? The buyer. When he sends a notice, nor he cannot retain the benefit of the goods sold at a higher price. He cannot even retain those benefits. Clear with this? So this is resale by an unpaid seller. So absence of such notice does not affect the new buyer anyways. So notice is just for your information. In case of absence of such notice also does not affect anyway, and if the notice is sent also, it conveys a good title to the new buyer. Clear with this? The next one is, eighth one is sale by a finder of goods. We have already studied this finder of goods, right? Where did we study? Under contract of bailment, right? Yes. According to section 71 of Indian Contract Act, finder of the goods becomes the bailee, and it is his duty to take due care and also return it to the owner. He has to find and return it to the owner. Section 169 of Indian Contract Act again says that if the owner is not found after reasonable diligence, or if the owner is found and if he refuses to pay lawful charges, then the finder may do what? He may sell it. He may sell it under what condition? We have already studied this. What are those conditions? Yes, when the goods or the thing which was found by the finder of the goods is in a perishable state. Suppose it is something of nature which is perishable, some fruits. It is of perishable. If it is in perishable state, he can sell it. Or if he feels that it may lose the major part or greater part of its value, then also he can sell it. Second point, he can take for the lawful charges, that is 2/3 of the value of the goods. He can sell it in those two cases. So the person, now we are talking from the viewpoint of the buyer who has not got from the true owner. So in this case, finder of the goods, if the buyer gets the goods from the finder of the goods, he gets a good title over the goods. Yeah. Then sale by pawning. We've studied about the pledge, right? Pledger and pledgee, pawner and pawnee. So now section 176 of Indian Contract Act, you get to know about pawnee. So it says that a pawnee, so in pawn, if there is any default by the pawner, pawnee can sue the pawner or may sell the goods pledged by giving notice. And the person who gets it from pawnee has a good title over it. Same as finder of goods, he gets a good title. This particular thing, sale by market overt, it is OVERT. This is recognized in English law and it considers as an exception. Well, these are important, the 9 points. This is one additional information. So under English law, it is also considered as an exception to this particular maxim. So it means sale in an open market. If buyer with good faith and without the notice of the defect or want in the title, if he buys any goods, he gets a good title. But here the seller has got, he'll be liable for tort of conversion, but the buyer has got a good title. So I hope you are clear with this. So transfer of title, when you are asked questions regarding transfer of title, the first thing should come to your mind is this legal maxim which says that only owner can transfer the good title. And there are certain exceptions which are given wherein it says that other than owner also there are persons who can transfer the title. So those are the exceptions. The next topic under Sale of Goods Act is performance of contract. What is this performance of contract? Now there is a transaction between buyer and seller that we will have this goods, the seller will be selling this goods and buyer will be getting this goods upon the payment. Now the seller has to perform his contract. That is how, that is there should be delivery. If there is a delivery of goods from seller to the buyer, then only there is performance of contract. Now let's directly go into the chapter. Chapter 4 deals with of Sale of Goods Act, remember, deals with this particular provisions, and section 31 to 41 deals with the provisions relating to performance of contracts. Going further, so there is a obligation to perform the contract, right? If the parties have got who are bound by the contract have obligation. So what is the duty of the seller? Who is the seller first of all? A person who sells or agrees to sell the goods to the buyer. Who is a buyer? Buyer is a person who purchases or agrees to buy goods from the seller upon a consideration, that is price money. That was a definition given under Sale of Goods Act. Now, after knowing all these things, let us go directly to the seller's duty regarding the performance of the contract. Your section 31 says that it is the duty of the seller to deliver the goods in accordance with the contract of sale. So it says that it is the duty of the seller to deliver in accordance with the contract of sale. What is delivery? What did I say delivery means? Delivery means here performance of contract. Delivery of goods, always remember what is performance of contract? It is delivery of goods. We are delivering the goods. This now, having understood that it is the seller's duty. See, remember this very well. Section 31 says that it is the seller's duty. You may come across when we are discussing the rules to delivery that when the seller becomes liable. So under that you try to link that section 31. So it's the seller's duty to deliver goods to the buyer as per the terms of contract. If nothing is mentioned, it is the seller who has to deliver the goods. Correct? Next, what is delivery? Delivery is given under sections 2 subsection 2. Definition under Sale of Goods Act again. What does it say? Says it is voluntary transfer of possession of goods from one person to another. It is voluntary. It is voluntary in nature and it is transfer of goods from one person to another. Simple. Now, even here also, the intention of the parties are important. How do they want to deliver? What is the mode they want to deliver? All those becomes important. So, before the intention of the parties, you got to know that there should be an intention how to deliver. Now, how can they deliver it? So, delivery has got 3 kinds. One is actual, symbolic and constructive. What is this actual? The goods, which is the subject matter of the contract and the Sale of Goods Act, has to be handed over by the seller to the buyer. So the goods, that is the subject matter, has to be handed over by the seller to the buyer. Now let's take some examples and let's try to understand it. It is quite simple. There is a seller of a book or a horse or some furniture. If it is taken away by the buyer or his agent, then it becomes actual delivery. There is a contract, another example. There is a contract to sell 100 bags of wheat. The buyer sends a transport vehicle and gets those 100 bags loaded there. That means there is a delivery. And what kind of delivery it is? Actual delivery. Actually, the subject matter is handed over to the buyer. The next kind of delivery is symbolic delivery. What is the symbolic delivery? Here, there is no actual transfer, but some symbol representing that goods is being transferred from one person to another person. Ma'am, how is it take place? Can you give certain example? Suppose the keys of the warehouse in which the goods are kept is with the buyer. It means there is a symbolic delivery. I'll give you an example for this. I have sold certain goods. I have certain goods in my godown. I have sold it to person B. Now that person, he says that I do not have any godown as such right now free. So I will take the goods. You please hand over me the possession of the keys. For some days I will keep your godown. So I give him the key to the B. So he is in possession. What does it mean? Symbolic delivery. Your railway receipts. When you load your goods in the railway, you get a railway receipt. The bill of lading, which when you load your goods in the ship. All these are symbolic delivery. Now what is constructive delivery? So constructive delivery means there is no change in the physical or actual possession. There is nothing, there is no change of goods in actual or physical possession of goods. And still, there is change in the legal character. That is, there is a seller and there is buyer and they have sold it. But there is no change in the actual possession or no physical custody of the goods. That is called as constructive delivery. Suppose the seller agrees to hold the goods for the buyer. Doesn't it constitute a constructive delivery? There is no action change. We'll take another example. There is a person A who has got a factory and he has installed certain machineries. Right? Now, he has sold it to B and the machineries, everything are intact. Now he is taking the custody of that. He is having the custody of that factory. So there is only change in the legal owner. That is, the buyer has become the owner. The seller, he is no more the owner. There is a change in legal character. These kinds are called as constructive delivery. So these are the three kinds of delivery. Now we'll move on further. Rules to delivery. There are certain rules to delivery. The first rule is according to the contract. Very simple. What according to contract? Whatever the contract says. What may be the time, place or manner of delivery, as per that you make the delivery. The second one is time of delivery, which is given under section 32. Here section 32 says that unless otherwise agreed, the delivery of goods and payment of price. Remember, delivery of goods and payment of price are concurrent condition. What is this concurrent condition? Delivery of goods and payment of price are concurrent conditions. What is it? It is the seller readily and willingly gives the possession of the goods to the buyer in exchange of price. When he is ready to pay the price, then the seller gives the goods to, readily and willingly gives the goods to the buyer. In turn, we'll talk from the buyer's viewpoint. The buyer is ready and willing to pay the price in exchange of possession of the goods. Clear with this? That is what is concurrent situation. You have to talk from the viewpoints of buyer and seller. Buyer wants the possession from the goods and he is ready to pay the price. Seller wants the price and he is ready to depart from the title or possession of the goods. That is called as concurrent condition. So the time of delivery and the payment is always a concurrent situation. Section 5, subsection 1, we have studied that the delivery can take place immediately. There can be immediate delivery of goods, or there can be even immediate payment also, even though there is no immediate delivery, or delivery or payment in installments. So delivery can happen anyways. It can be an immediate delivery or an immediate payment or part payment, or in parts it can be delivered. We'll take some examples and try to understand. There's a contract between A and B. So A shall deliver the goods to B and it has to be paid by B on delivery. So the B, when he should pay, A is delivering the goods to B. Now the B has to pay the money. When he'll pay, he'll agree that on delivery I'll pay. Now A need not deliver unless B is ready and willing to pay. That is what I explained under concurrent situation. Now B need not pay unless A is ready and willing to part with the possession, ready to give the possession to B. So this is what is an example. We have a case law for this. Vishnu Sagar Mills Limited versus Food Corporation of India. This is relating to this particular concurrent condition. The respondent is Food Corporation of India and these people are the petitioner. This FCI, that is Food Corporation of India, they purchased certain sugar called Levy sugar from the petitioner. And how did they purchase? It is under the statute. That is, there should be under the compulsory sale, and the rate was also fixed, that is under certain rate. The corporation, the FCI, they were paying whenever they had delivered, the petitioner, that is Vishwa Sugar Mills had delivered. After delivery, they were paying it immediately. Then later, after some days, they made a unilateral agreement. That is, only the Food Corporation of India had made an agreement stating that there will be delay in payment after the delivery of sugar. There will be certain delay. Maybe after a month or 2 months, we'll be paying you for the delivery. So they have made a unilateral agreement as such. Now they file a case. What was held here is, in such situation, the payment or delivery should be concurrent. That is, when there is a agreement of payment or there is no agreement regarding the payment or delivery, it should be concurrent. If there is any agreement which is made between the parties regarding the time of delivery also or the payment also, fine. If not, it should be a concurrent condition. Here with us. The next one, third one, is buyer's duty to apply for delivery. So usually it says that the buyer's duty to demand for delivery unless there is any contract between the seller and buyer. If there is any contract that seller will take the responsibility to deliver, or if at all buyer takes the responsibility to deliver, then it is up to as per the contract. But buyer has a duty to demand for the delivery. He can ask for the goods to be delivered from the seller. Next, we will talk about place of delivery. Parties are free to decide the place. Wherever they want, they can choose the place of delivery. Have you heard of CIF, that is cost, insurance and freight? So in that case, seller dispatches the goods after paying insurance and freight charges and send the documents to the buyer. This is also one type of delivery. They make insurance and freight charges and then they send it to the buyer. This is one of the type of place of delivery. And free on board, that is, seller to put goods on board of ship at the starting point. He'll put the goods and it is up to the buyer to receive it at the point of destination. Even in case of railways also it happens. That is, at the starting point, the seller loads the goods in the train and there is some railway receipts received, and later on when the destination is reached, the buyer has to receive it. It is up to the parties to decide their places. The next one is expenses of delivery. What did we study here? Seller's duty to deliver goods in accordance to the contract. So what it says, unless otherwise provided by the contract. Agreed. The incidental expenses of putting goods in the deliverable state is to be borne by whom? Seller, because it is seller's duty. So any incidental expenses, it has to be borne by the seller. So if in contrast, the buyer to take delivery and goods not in deliverable state, if it is not, if buyer is taking the delivery and the goods are not in deliverable state, then who is liable? It must be borne by the seller. Sixth rule to the rules of delivery is effect of part delivery on passing of property. What is the effect of part delivery in case if the whole delivery is not made and only a part delivery is made? What is the effect? That particular thing is dealt in section 34. It says delivery of part goods. It is delivery of part goods in progress of delivery of whole. That is, there is whole goods to be delivered and the delivery, right now only a part of the goods have been delivered, has the same effect as a whole delivery. So when you are supposed to deliver the whole goods, suppose you are supposed to sell 1000 tins of oil and you are selling 700 tins of oil. It is a part delivery, and the whole delivery is still in progress. That is, you are going to fulfill it. under that condition, it has the same effect as if it is a whole delivery when you are talking about part delivery. The section 34 subsection 1 gives this. Now coming to the second part, when the delivery of part not made. So it says when delivery of part not made in progress of whole delivery. When they are not making a delivery, part delivery, and it is not related to the entire delivery, that is 1000 tins of oil you have purchased. And they are sending 500 tins of oil, and that is not in progress relevant to the whole delivery, whole entire 1000 tins, it is not a part of it. Then what happens there? It shows the intention of serving a part from the whole. It shows that they are only making a part. They are interested. What is their intention? Only serving the part of the delivery, that is 500 tins. So not delivery of remainder. It is not considered to be the delivery. There is no the remainder, whatever is there, that is 500 has been delivered. Remaining 500 tins is the remainder, right? So not a delivery. You cannot consider a delivery under this, under the second clause. So because it is not a part of whole delivery which is in progress. Clear from this? And their intention is also to make that part delivery as a separate delivery. So this is the effect of part delivery on passing of the goods, which is given under section 34. Now let's go with an example. Now the seller, he delivers 1000 bags of wheat to the buyer. The buyer, he arranges a transport. How he arranges the transport is 100 bags in one trip. That is, he is arranging a transport, maybe a tempo, and the tempo is only capable of carrying 100 bags. So he makes an arrangement, and he sees to that the 200 bags are being taken over by the buyer in 2 trips. So before the remainder, that is out of 1000 bags, only 200 bags were taken. Before the remainder, that is 800 bags, could be taken, the goods were destroyed by the fire when it was in the possession of the seller. Now the question has been this: who becomes liable? The buyer becomes liable for this because it was his duty to take it. Clear? Next, same example with some different situation. So there was a delivery of contract of sale of 1000 bags. The buyer demands that from seller, you send me 200 bags of delivery immediately. The seller obliges and he says fine, I'll deliver it, and he sells he makes an arrangement for delivery to send 200 bags to the buyer. Now after sending, the demand was made for what? Only 200 bags. Further, for the remainder, the seller won't be liable. It was requested for 200, only 200 I said, and now he is not he doesn't become anyways liable to it. The next one is delivery of goods in wrong quantity or different description or of different description. So under this, we are going to study it into we're going to make it into 3 points in study. When it comes to wrong quantity, quantity less or quantity more, mixed delivery in that case of description. So when it is when the quantity is less, what happens? The buyer can reject it. If the quantity is less, why should he accept it? As per the terms of the agreement, he has to go by it, right? So when it is less, he can reject it. If he waives his right to reject it, then if he doesn't reject it, he doesn't want to reject it, then he has to pay the contract price and receive the goods. For example, the contract was for 100 bags and the buyer receives only 80 bags. He can reject it, or if at all he accepts it, he has to pay the contract price. Clear with this? This buyer's right to reject is subject to this particular maxim, de minimis non curata lex. What is this maxim? It says that law does not take into consideration the trivial deviation into account. Trivial deviation. What is trivial word? Trivial. It means that a very small, which can be ignored. Such deviations you cannot refuse. The buyer cannot reject it upon such minute changes in the contract. The buyer cannot reject it. So let's take an example and try to understand this maxim properly. Again, there was a contract of 1000 kgs of, or 1000 bags of wheat. There was a short of 200 kgs, short of only 200 kgs of wheat. At that time, you can apply this particular law maxim, legal maxim, and the buyer cannot reject it. So your buyer rights to reject is, it's an exception to it. That means he cannot enforce his right when there is a very minute deviation in a contract. Even the law does not accept it. When the quantity is more, what happens? So same thing, reject the more quantity or reject the whole goods or accept the whole goods. If accepted, he has to pay for the more quantity also. Now, if it is a mixed delivery, I told you it is pertaining to different description. Your section 15 gives you the description, right? Implied condition of sale by description. If it is as per the description, no rejection, he cannot reject, he has to take it. If there is a contract to sell with certain description of mixed goods, then fine, it is not included. If the contract of sale, what they have entered is only for saying that there should be a mixed description, then it is not included. Buyer may accept with accordance to the contract if it is mixed. In case if it is certain mixed goods, in that case he may accept it or he may reject it. He may reject the mixture, whatever the rest he can reject it, and whatever is relevant to his contract he can accept it. Otherwise he can reject it at all. So this is under when the delivery is in given in wrong quantity or different description. The next one is installments. Installment delivery. What happens if it is in installments? So if it is agreed by the parties, they can proceed with the installment delivery, and on each installment the amount has to be paid. The next one is delivery to carriers or wharfingers. Who are these carriers? We already discussed. The person who is transporting people are the carriers, or wharfingers are the person who load or unload the goods in the ship. We have discussed it under bailment, right? So delivery to carriers or wharfingers are considered to be delivery to buyers. Under section 39, subsection 2, it says that it is the duty of the seller to make the contract with the carrier or wharfinger on behalf of the buyer, as may be reasonable to the nature of goods and other circumstances of the case. So it is the duty of the seller to make the contract, because he is the one who is giving it to the transporter or the wharfingers in order to deliver the goods to the destination, that is to the buyer. So he has to make a contract so that if there is any loss, who saying that they are at the risk. So we have a case law for this. From this we understand clearly what is the duty of the seller towards the carrier or the wharfinger. Young versus Hobson. In this case, the sellers were to dispatch certain goods to the buyers. Those were relating to some electrical items, and they had agreed that they will be sending it through railways. The seller dispatched the engine. He dispatched the engine also. The seller had made a contract saying that if there is any loss, the risk whatever is there, it will not be borne by the railway. It is not a railway risk. It is not for the railway authorities, but the risk is for the person who is buying. That is, the buyer will bear any risk if there is any loss or accident in between. So it says that it is at the owner's risk, that is buyer. Owner is buyer itself. So on the way the goods were damaged, and the court held that The contract of carriage made by the seller was not reasonable. In the circumstances of the case, and buyers were entitled to reject the engines. So it should have been on the carriers, right? That is the railways who had to take the risk. But the risk is placed on the owner. It is not reasonable. So under the circumstances, the buyer does not bear the loss or bear the risk. The last one is risk where goods are delivered at the distant place. So when the goods are delivered to a distant place, obviously there would be a risk of goods getting damaged or meeting with an accident. So seller takes the risk at a place other than where they are at the time of contract. So the seller can take the risk. Section 40 says that the loss to be borne by the buyer. If there is any loss, it has to be borne by the buyer. We have a case law for this, that is Bull versus Robinson. Under this case law, what happens? The seller, he sent a hoop iron from one place to another place which is quite distant from each other. When the iron was sent, it was clean and bright when it was dispatched from the seller. Then later, during the transit, it became rusted when it reached the destination. It was held that seller was not responsible for this. Whatever the goods have been deteriorated, seller is not liable for this and the buyer becomes liable. That is given under section 40 here. Seller is taking the risk of sending it. And buyer, if there is any loss, who has to bear it? It has to be borne by the buyer. That is what your section 40 says. So here, be very clear, seller is taking delivery risk, that is he is sending it upon buyer's insistence. So these are certain rules under performance of contract. To move further, we also have something called buyer's duty. The buyer's duty are very simple. The first one is accept the goods and pay for the goods. The buyer has a duty to accept the goods. He has to buy it. When he buys the goods after paying money, he cannot wrongfully neglect it. Or he cannot say no without any reason. He has to accept his goods. There is one case by name Denby Hamilton and Company versus Barden. What happens in the case is, the buyer wrongfully refused to take the delivery of 30 tons of apple juice. It fails to take apple juice. He had ordered for apple juice and he fails to take the apple juice. And worse, that is why he became liable for, and the juice is going to, obviously it's a perishable in nature, right? That is why when the juice was spoiled, who becomes liable for this? It is the buyer who becomes liable for this. That is why it is his duty to accept the goods. And also, under what situation can you get to know that the buyer has accepted the goods? It is deemed to be accepted when he intimates the seller, when he informs to the seller, yes, then the goods are accepted. Any act in relation to them inconsistent with the ownership of the seller. If he does any act which becomes inconsistent with the ownership of the seller. Suppose now I have got the possession. A has sold me certain goods and I have got the ownership of it. He has delivered it from a distant place. Let's assume. Now I don't tell him, I don't convey him that I have got the ownership. But what I do, I further pledge it. We already saw this in one of the case. So when I pledged it, I make some action which shows that he is no more owner, I am the real owner. And I obviously retain it and not reject those goods. Then it is deemed that I am the owner of the goods. Then another important duty is pay for the goods. When he is buying the goods, he has to pay for the goods. So these are the things that come under the performance of contract. Under performance of contract, delivery becomes very important. Under section 2 subsection 2, the delivery definition is given. We have three kinds of delivery: actual delivery, constructive delivery and symbolic delivery, and certain rules regarding delivery. When does it become a proper delivery? And at last we have buyer's duty. Very simple. He has to accept the goods and he has to pay for the goods.